Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Pulse Ox podcast. Today on the show, we have Sarah Josey, clinical herbalist, nutritionist, and owner of Golden Poppy Herbal Apothecary, a full-service clinic and retail store located in Fort Collins, Colorado. She specializes in hormone balancing. Digestive issues, specialized dietary issues, fertility, and increasing overall health and vitality. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So I gave you an introduction, but give us a little bit of insight into you and your practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the owner of Golden Poppy. We're a retail store in Fort Collins. We also have an online store, and we also have a clinic and a classroom space as well. And I'm really fortunate to have 14 employees, I think, at this point in time. Several others who also do clinical work alongside me. And it's a really wonderful place to work, a wonderful group of people. And I love what I do. And I love helping people find herbs and serving our community, both in person and online.
So when you say clinical practice, what kind of credentials are you guys what kind of professional certifications do you guys have to clinically treat people?
Yeah, so herbalism is not a licensed healthcare profession in the United States. So here comes my disclaimer. I am not a doctor and I do not give medical advice, and nothing I say is medical advice or can be used to treat or cure or prevent disease. It's purely informational purposes. In the world of herbalism, in the United States, like I said, it's not a licensed profession. So it's a little bit of the Wild West, which can be really great and can also have its downsides. It's really great because herbalism is really for the people. It was the original medicine before what we have and think of as conventional medicine. And there's a really big movement back towards that. And because herbalism can be self-studied, it can be really empowering. But then you also run into the issue of people sometimes not having enough education and giving bad advice or things like that. So in other countries, especially like the UK and the European Union, they have much more stringent regulations around becoming an herbalist. Herbalism in the United States is not a licensed profession. It is in the UK and the EU. They have created rules and regulations around being a practicing herbalist, just like we would with being a naturopath or an acupuncturist here in the United States. So it can be really good because people can self-study as herbalists in the United States, but it can also be bad because then you run into people who don't really have enough education, saying the wrong things, people calling themselves a master herbalist after taking a 3-month-long course online. Drives me crazy. I don't even call myself a master herbalist, and I've been practicing for 11 years. Like I don't know where that
is there a governing body that could give you a master herbalism title?
So the closest thing that we have is the American Herbalist Guild, and you can become a registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild. They have been around for, I'm not actually sure how long. I think it's 50 years at this point in time, and they have something, an RH designation, registered herbalist, and you have to submit an application, you have to submit case studies, get peer reviewed. It's a pretty lengthy process. And I imagine that if at any point in time the United States decides to start licensing herbalists, people who are already registered herbalists with the AHG will likely be kind of grandfathered into that. So that's the closest thing that we have.
Right on. So,
So everything else is just a certificate of completion from whatever program you went through. So however that program decided to title themselves and title the certificate at the end is what people have decided to use to label themselves.
Look into the future for me. Look into a crystal ball, if you will. What do you see as kind of the future of herbalism in 10 years? Will there be a governing body? Do you see a melding together of the traditional Western medicine and this herbal this process? Do you see them merging together? and what kind of obstacles are we going to have to overcome before it becomes more of a clinical certification recognized by another medical practitioner?
Yeah, I think even in just the 10 years since I left herb school and have been doing this, I've seen so much more integration with conventional medicine and alternative health like herbalism. There are universities across the country now who are offering, courses on herbalism at a university level. You can get, even at just the community college in my town, you can get an associate's degree in alternative health now. So I really do think that the direction is heading towards more licensure and more credentialing of herbalism. And I think if you're going to do kind of what I do, which is what I call clinical herbalism, where I sit down and I work with people one-on-one and I really help them puzzle through their health picture, I think that's really important because you can give bad advice. And the program that I went through, I had mentors. The Colorado Board of Education actually licenses the school that I went through as an occupational school. So it's basically the same as going through a mechanics school or an esthetician program, right? Like the Board of Education has some oversight into it. And that's about as close as we can get right now, because there's so much bad advice online these days. And a lot of it comes from people who are self-learning and not doing a very good job at being rigorous about it. So, yeah.
Can you point us to the authority? Who do you go to? Obviously you had your formal training, you went to school for this, but if somebody is online, other than your website, which we will promote profusely on the show today, what direction would you send people to get more educated about herbalism and herbal solutions to their medical problems?
There's some really prominent, long-standing herbalists who I tend to trust and go for. One of my favorite resources of all time is Aviva Romm. She is an herbalist, but she is also a midwife and a medical doctor. So she started off as an herbalist, became a midwife, and then went to Yale Medical School. And she is one of my favorite places to send people because she does that amazing job of melding conventional medicine with herbalism, and she backs it all up with research. She digs into the research that is being done on herbs, because there is a lot of like medical research being done on herbs all the time. So I feel like looking to sources like that is, when I have a question, that's where I go.
Is there a particular medical research paper that comes to mind that's of particular interest recently that you would encourage people to go take a look at?
Not off the top of my head, like a specific paper that I've read recently.
Give us some thought. We'll come back to it. But
yeah. Well, so the American Herbalist Guild has a newsletter, and they will pull all of the new research papers and journals and things that come out in the major medical publications that are related specifically to herbalism, and they kind of put them together. So that tends to be a really good resource when I have time to look at new research.
Is there? Yeah, you got 14 employees and a whole bunch of things to do. So
yeah,
is there an herb that you would say we're on the cutting edge of finding out the applicability of that herb to treating different ailments right now? Is there one in particular that is like, wow, we've just barely scratched the surface of this obscure, leaf of this bush in the wilderness of Colorado that is going to cure Alzheimer's? Is there something like that that's particularly exciting right now?
It's funny. I feel the opposite about most plants. I think one of my favorite plants, and this is a question that people ask me all the time, is what's your favorite plant, or what plant do you use every day? And I was like, well, besides coffee, my favorite plant is an herb. It's called plantain. The Latin name is Plantago species, and it's not the banana plantains. It's this little green leaf that grows mostly in disturbed soils. And you can find it now. It's pretty much naturalized all across the globe. And it's one of my favorite plants, and it's so mild and it's so gentle, and it's not on the cutting edge of anything. It's nothing special. It's literally in every single person's backyard, probably. And they just walk on it all the time. But it is a really amazing demulcent herb. It's really soothing to the digestive system, but it's also really awesome for skin. It has so many applications across the board that I feel like instead of looking for this crazy exotic plant or trying to pretend that turmeric and CBD is going to fix every single problem that you have, like, let's find something that you can access really easy in your backyard and start there. It doesn't have to be fancy.
Oh man, I gotta get rid of all my turmeric.
It's still a good one. It's just not going to cure everything.
Right on. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So tell me a day in the life. If I'm coming to you and I walk into the clinic, what is your process for helping me, diagnosing me, treating me as a new patient?
Yeah. So I don't diagnose or treat.
Fair enough.
But what happens most of the time is in the retail store, I am usually in the back because I own the business. So most of my time is spent doing back end stuff and then seeing my one-on-one clients. So what happens most of the time is people will walk into the store and they'll talk to one of my staff members and they'll give them kind of a down and dirty of what they've got going on. And if it's something that we already have a tea blend made for or tincture made up for, then they'll recommend those and point people in that direction. But sometimes people come in with really complicated issues, or they're on medications, or they have like 6 things going on. And that's when they'll recommend that they do a one-on-one consultation. And then someone will schedule with me. And then I have a process. We have a really long, like 14-page long intake form. My initial consultations are about an hour and a half. And I just sit down and I go over your whole health history with you and then talk about herbs. We talk about lifestyle. We talk about food and supplements and come up with a really personalized plan for you and what you've got going on.
Do you find that people from different geographical backgrounds, different heritages, right? Like I'm German and Mexican, right? So do you find that the geographic origins of a person have a lot to do with the personalization of the plans that you give them?
I would say yes, but it has a lot to do with kind of cultural expectations more so, right? So, if someone with your background is coming in and talking to me, and I suspect that legumes are causing a digestive issue for you, that might be a really big challenge for someone whose family food staples are rice and beans, right?
Yeah, beans and beer for us.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you have, like, my husband is similar background, like every family meal is like a big pot of green chili with beans. And I always eat it because it's my favorite thing in the world, but I always know it's going to kind of mess me up for a day or two. So I have to have that kind of cultural sensitivity piece in there to be like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with you, and I need you to feel out whether or not you feel like this would be realistic for you to get rid of legumes for a little while to see if it's the issue. Not that I want it to be the issue, that's the opposite, but maybe it is. And how are you going to deal with that? And what would that look like for you? There's also that kind of cultural sensitivity piece too, with like, maybe rice and beans is your staple because that's what you can afford. So what are some options that I can, work with you on so that we don't have to remove those things from your diet because that's not super realistic for your life.
So if do you find that you have a hard time changing people's behaviors in getting them to actually achieve the results, right? Is there an element of ongoing coaching and habit breaking that you have to break through in order for the solutions that you're giving to people to work? How much of your time is spent trying to change people's behavior?
Most of it. Yeah, I would say most of my time is working on being that support person for the changes that the people want to make. One thing about what I do is often people come to me either because they don't want to go kind of a conventional medical route because they have distrust of it, or maybe they don't feel like their issues are bad enough yet. They need to go that route. Or they're on the other side of that, where they've just spent years in and out of doctor's offices and have not had any real tangible results, and they just feel like there's something missing. Either way, I tend to have people who are really dedicated to changing what they want, right? People aren't going to come see me if they just want a pill to make it better, because I don't offer that. That's not an option. So if you're going to come see me and talk to me, it's because you're willing to do the hard work and take a long time to see changes. Not that it has to take a long time, but it's definitely going to take longer than starting a prescription.
Can you tell us a story about someone who came to you who had been through maybe a whole bunch of medical practitioners to try and solve their problem, and they weren't experiencing any success? And what did you do for that person, and what was the result, and how are they doing today?
Yeah, so I had a client, this was quite a few years ago, and she was really young. She was in her mid-20s, and she had like debilitating eczema on her hands. So she just like, her hands were really dry and itchy, and then they would crack, and then they would weep. And it was a problem. One, because they're your hands, right? So everybody sees your hands all the time. And two, it hurt. So it made it hard for her to just kind of function in daily life. And she'd been dealing with eczema since she was a really little kid. And the standard kind of medical treatment for eczema is steroid cream. And steroid cream long-term has a whole host of side effects and negative things that it can cause. And also, when you stop topical steroids, there's a lot of steroid withdrawal issues that happen. So it's just this really vicious cycle. And so she was someone who had issues with that. And when we started working together, kind of one of the first things that I pinpointed was she also had a whole host of digestive issues. And nothing ever happens in a vacuum, right? There's always once you start talking to somebody, there's always something else that's also happening. And you're like, okay, well, these two are definitely connected.
Oh, it's the beans in the beer. Right?
Yeah. So for her, it was dairy, right? So we did a bunch of puzzling through things, and I was like, well, let's try these things and see how it goes for you. And she just straight up looked at me. She's like, I cannot stop eating dairy. It is my favorite thing on the planet. I was like, yeah, I get that. I was that person also. Like, in college, I would go to Whole Foods and spend my entire budget on like fancy blue cheese and crackers, right? That's like
Amen.
What I ate. Yeah, it's amazing. I was like, yes, I get that. But nothing else is working. So are you willing to at least give it a try? Like, can you set aside 8 weeks to try and see what happens? We'll do a whole bunch of other herbs in conjunction with it, but like, give it a real effort. And she did, and it worked. It was gone. And she came back and we did a couple of follow-ups kind of in that 8-week period of time, just so I could make sure she was on track and we could adjust things and check in. But at the end of the 8 weeks, she sat down. She's like, okay, I'm ready to add it back in. I was like, okay, let's add it back in and see what happens. And this happens a lot too, because I tend to have really good results with people. Sometimes I never see them again because they're just like, cool, I'm great. And then I never hear from them again. And I didn't hear from her for like 6 months or something. And then she emailed me out of the blue and she's like, hey, I need some more of my tea. I started eating dairy again and it's totally flaring up again. But when I drink the tea, it seems to be better. So can I still have tea and eat the cheese? And I was like, you can do whatever you want to do. But at least you know now, right? Like, maybe you only eat cheese every other week and it's not so bad instead of like every meal.
I have a question about that. So you mentioned, do I take the hit, right? Do I eat some beans? Do I eat some gluten? Do I have some dairy? And do I take the hit, right? Just because it's so delicious and I have to have it, and it's just so yummy in my tummy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looking forward to the rest of your life, are those hits taking years off your life? Like, what are the long-term effects of those times that you eat that crap that you know that you're not supposed to eat, and it makes you feel yucky, right? You feel yucky, you feel sweatier, right? All that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What are the long-term effects of that? Or is it short-term enough that, a few fixes, a few lifestyle changes can make it so that your standard of living and your total life expectancy doesn't change at all? Tell me a little bit about that.
I think we're all going to die, right? So, and we don't know when we're going to die. We don't know how we're going to die or why we're going to die. I definitely believe in taking the hit, but knowing what your limit is, right? People get sick and get terminal illnesses who are like the epitome of health, right? And we don't have any answers for why that happens. And then there are other people who smoke and drink, like my grandma. She smoked and drank and ate all the things, and she died at 96 in her bed, So who knows? I'm a big believer that once you get yourself to a better place, right? Like once you realize how much better you can feel by making the right changes for you, get yourself to that good place, and then you can play, right? I will not touch dairy with a 10-foot pole. If I go to Italy, I'll try gelato just to see what happens, because everybody says it's different in Italy, right? I'll try gelato. I won't touch dairy with a 10-foot pole here. It's not worth it for me. I'll dabble with all the other things that my body doesn't really love, right? Like I'll eat gluten here or there. I'll have some eggs in a baked good. Nobody wants to sit next to me for, the rest of the night if I do. But if somebody went out of their way to make like a gluten-free, dairy-free pie, but it had eggs in it, I'm going to eat it because I can.
So let's, I get that. So I have a selfish question. So I enjoy working out very, very much. I enjoy working my muscles and sweating a lot and getting all that energy out and trying to get really super duper buff. And there's a lot of people that come on the show that do that as well. And I know for a fact, right, for myself, especially for my wife too, we use pre-workout.
Mm-hmm.
And pre-workout has a whole list of things in it that they sound like, medical. They sound like ingredients in Ozempic, right? This sounds like chemical compounds that were produced by the X-Men. So for all the workout fanatics out there, is there a certain combination of herbs that you might concoct for somebody who wants to get a natural pre-workout? Is there something that we can throw together, a little cocktail? And I acknowledge that everybody's health is different, everybody's biome is different, but is there a way that we can create a natural pre-workout that isn't gonna potentially melt our faces off, right, with things that are in there? Like a natural source of niacin or a natural source of caffeine that we can mix together.
Totally. Yeah. So it's funny you ask this question. My husband had a job for a long time that was really physically demanding. So he's a really big exercise guy. So I have actually dug into this particular topic before. So I would say if I owned a lab and I could just create my own pre-workout, right? I would put electrolytes in. That's one of the things that I feel like most pre-workouts are missing, or just electrolytes. And like if you work out first thing in the morning and the only thing that you're drinking is your pre-workout and your coffee, right? If you're going to go work out fasted, you got to have some electrolytes in there because your body just can't function without them and you're not going to feel as good. So I would do some electrolytes. I would do some caffeine from green tea. I would probably also have the L-theanine in green tea because the L-theanine kind of balances out the intensity of caffeine. That's part of what makes tea different from coffee. And then I would have some herbs like rhodiola. I would probably have a little bit of turmeric and a little bit of black pepper and maybe even a little bit of ashwagandha. And I would just keep it simple. I would also, if I could, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but I would put a plant in there called He Shu Wu. Polygonum multiflorum is the Latin name. It's also called black hair Mr. He. And it's an herb that comes traditionally from Chinese medicine. It's got a really kind of fun backstory, but it's an adaptogenic herb that supports longevity. And it's not like rhodiola and ashwagandha where it amps you up, but it supports, I believe, I don't know if there's any clinical studies on this, but my best guess is that it just supports your body's antioxidant processes. So when you're working out really hard, you're creating a lot of oxidative stress in your body. So you want to have something to help your body get rid of those oxidative issues, like oxidative compounds a little bit better. That would be the one that I would put in there.
Boy, that was the coolest mix of chemical plants, plant herbs and everything that I could think of. There's companies out there like Sunwink and Mudwater that create these powdered blends for like coffee replacements. Do you have some of these available in your store and on your website?
We make an herbal coffee blend that has no caffeine whatsoever. So it's a combination of like mushrooms, dandelion root, chaga, which isn't technically a mushroom. That's why I separated out. Chicory and a couple of other things. So it's like similar to mud water in that way. Yeah.
You mentioned chamomile tea as this kind of this golden digestive herb that people can consume. So I have a multi-layered question. What is a tip that you would give people who are having digestive issues in general, right? What's one direction that you would send them in? And then tell us a little bit more about the effects and the benefits of the solution to that digestive issue.
Yeah. So I would say I'll start with a non-herbal tip. Is to slow down and pay attention when you're eating. We hear this one all the time, but if you slow down and you pay attention, one, your digestive system is going to work better. It's going to digest things better. And you're going to notice connections between what you eat and how you feel better. And as soon as you can start to make those connections between what you're eating and how it makes you feel, you can figure out if what you're eating is actually making your body feel good or not. And then the herbal tip would be chamomile, like you said. Chamomile is a really underrated herb. It's really mild. It's really gentle. It's safe for pretty much everyone, children, like compromised people. And people think that because it's really safe and gentle, it's not powerful. But the opposite is, it's the opposite. It's a digestive bitter. So research has shown that your digestive system, like from end to end, has receptors that are stimulated by bitter compounds and the bitter flavor. So whenever you have something that tastes bitter, and you have to actually taste the bitter, you can't hide the bitter flavor, it stimulates your digestive system. And once it stimulates your digestive system, it turns on all of those digestive juices, the enzymes get going, the peristalsis gets going. So your digestive system is going to work better. You're going to break your food down better, and your body's going to absorb the nutrients better. Chamomile is also an aromatic. So it's got aromatic compounds that have been shown to reduce like gas, bloating, indigestion, all of those things. And at the same time, chamomile is considered a nervine, a relaxing nervine. So that means it relaxes the nervous system. So this kind of goes hand in hand with that slowing down to eat. If you're in this fight or flight mode, your digestive system is also kind of like amped up like this. Because chamomile has this calming nervous system effect, it can kind of bring that down again so that your body can move into the rest and digest phase a little bit better. And again, the digestion is going to work better. So chamomile has all these different properties that kind of synergistically work together to just improve digestion. And you can drink it pretty much all day, every day with little to no side effects. Some people feel really tired when they drink chamomile tea. I can drink it in the middle of the day and I'm fine, but some people are more sensitive than others. So
right on. We have a lot of health professionals that come on here, and one of the topics that come up with their patients frequently is having a better intimate experience with their partner or with however many partners they want. they want to be better in bed. They want to be more confident. They want to be more expressive. They want to get out of their heads. They want to reduce their anxiety. From a master herbalist's perspective, I'm going to go ahead and brand you as that, and the guild can carry me away and tar and feather me as they please. But is there what are some tips? What are some guidance that you would give to people from an herbalist perspective to help them optimize their sexual health?
Yeah. So there's a couple. A couple of herbs that come to mind. The first one is Damiana. Damiana is really well known as an aphrodisiac. It's traditionally found in like Mexico and Central America. That's kind of where it grows and where it's the most popular. Every place I've ever traveled in Mexico, you can find like Damiana infused liqueurs. And Damiana is a really fun herb because it's a relaxing nervine, kind of like I talked about with the chamomile already. So it brings your nervous system down, but it is also really aromatic. So it's stimulating as well. And we don't know why, but Damiana very specifically is stimulating and increases blood flow to the pelvic region. So you have this herb that is calming your nervous system down, right? So you can kind of get out of your head at the same time that it's increasing blood to your pelvic region. Everything about, intimate sex, love, all of that is calming your nervous system and increasing blood to the pelvic region. No matter what your parts look like down there, you got to have more blood for it to get going.
You said there was a couple. So
Oh, yeah. So the second one would be milky oats. So most people that I talk to who are having issues with that, a lot of it comes back to like an overworked nervous system. Us as humans we overdo it. We, especially in this country, right? We go all the time. We have 3 jobs. We drink too much coffee. The world is on fire. It's hard to get yourself to calm down. So milky oats is an herb that would be used as a long-term tonic. So this would be for somebody who's got kind of like regular issues, kind of getting into the mood, mostly associated with like tension or that like being stuck in their own heads. Milky oats, it's sort of like if you imagine your nervous system as an electrical wire, milky oats helps restore what's called the myelin sheath, or that sort of like plastic protective coating that's on the outside of the wire. So if that protective coating, the myelin sheath, gets irritated, then your nerves are more exposed and they're more frayed. And milky oats over time helps your body restore that myelin sheath so everything just kind of flows along more smoothly. And because most people in society tend to be kind of this like frayed, wired state, the milky oats can help bring you back down. That's more of a long-term tonic, like you got to use it on a regular basis type of thing, but I see really, really good results with people with that. Damiana is more of that like get going right now kind of situation.
How can somebody know, or I think there's probably a lot of people who are not even aware that they have a sensitivity to milk because they're not paying attention, right? You mentioned slowing down. But is there a methodology, is there a step-by-step process that we can use to uncover some truths about our digestive health that you would recommend?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, this kind of goes back to your question earlier about like people's geographical region and how that affects them. So we can see certain populations and certain like ethnic backgrounds have a higher propensity to be sensitive to some things over others. Dairy is a really, really good example of this. People with like Asian descent, African American descent, Ashkenazi Jewish descent, they are all much more likely to be lactose intolerant or just like sensitive to dairy than people whose backgrounds come from like Scandinavia or Ireland or the UK, things like that. So we can see some of those things from a kind of like genetic perspective, basically. So that's a good place to start. Beyond that, a lot of what it is looking at what we now, know about people who are sensitive to gluten or sensitive to dairy or sensitive to what have you, and what those typical symptom pictures tend to look like, and making an educated guess.
You mentioned a elimination diet.
Mhm.
Now, I want to talk to two different schools of thought here. We've talked with a couple of fasting experts on this podcast. How would you incorporate a fast into your herbalism practice, and then how would you incorporate an elimination diet into the way that you treat your clients?
I think that fasting is awesome for some people and not awesome for other people. When I'm working with someone who's got just a completely wrecked digestive system, like it seems like every single thing they eat is just destroying them, oftentimes I will do or have them kind of start an elimination diet with a modified fast. So I will have them do either like a juice fast or a bone broth fast with herbal teas kind of in the mix, something to help their system clear out whatever it's got in there while also giving their body enough nourishment to kind of start the process, right? And I would have them do that for a few days, whatever worked for them, whatever they could tolerate, no more than probably like 3 or 4 days. And just get their body to reset itself. And then we would start with an elimination diet, come up with a plan for what do we think the most likely foods are that are actually causing the issue. And if everything you eat is causing an issue, it's because your digestive system just isn't working the way it should. So let's find out, let's work on herbs that have been shown to help support tissue healing in the digestive tract. That's like one of the biggest components of what I do is there's always herbs that I'm working with people to help support the tissue healing on the interior side of the digestive tract. And then taking out the most common culprits and then seeing what happens from there.
I love it. So there's a lot more that we could dive into, but we're running short on time. So there's a lot of people who are listening who are probably balling on a budget, right? They're trying, and you spoke to this earlier of just finding things that work for them. Are there resources out there that can help people eat healthy on a very strict financial limitation? What would you encourage people to do who can't buy everything organic, who can't invest in a whole bunch of herbs? How would you recommend that they optimize their health without having the financial resources that others might have?
Definitely. Yeah. I think one of the most important places to start is working within what you've got, right? If someone came to me and they're like, I can only take home $5 worth of an herb today, I'm going to give them a $5 bag of plantain and say, start drinking this tea. If you do nothing else, it's going to help soothe some of the irritation in your digestive tract, and you are probably going to start to feel better within a couple of weeks. Even if you don't change what you're eating, this is probably going to support your system to digest the foods that you're eating a little bit better. Organic is amazing. I wish all of our food was organic and we didn't use chemicals and pesticides in our food, because we have no idea what it's doing to our digestive system aside from what it's doing to the environment. But that's not the end all be all. I would rather see someone use their food stamps to buy whatever fresh produce they could buy and whatever, quality protein sources they could afford, and definitely skip the organic, right? Like if someone is on a beans and rice budget, let's talk about how we can cook the beans so that they are more easily digestible. Let's talk about some of the spices that you can add to your beans, like cumin and black pepper, and things that have been shown to help improve digestibility. And cumin's also really helpful for supporting gas and bloating. So if you get a lot of gas and bloating when you eat beans, let's put some herbs and spices in there that you can also find for super duper cheap, definitely covered by food stamps. Let's see what we can do to just improve the way your body handles the food that you are taking in.
I love that. The last question that I have for you, actually, sorry, two more questions. So, we talk a lot about hormones on our show, and there's a lot of companies out there, many guests who have come on here talk about testosterone replacement therapy, estrogen, progesterone. And so, speaking from a more naturalistic perspective, how can people approach the natural balancing of their hormones?
I think that most of the time when I'm working with people on hormones, I don't have the ability to do hormone replacement therapy. That's way outside my purview. And even when people come to me asking for kind of like herbal options for hormone replacement therapy, it doesn't really work that way. Herbs don't work like drugs. They move your body back towards the homeostasis that it wants to be in. So a lot of what I start with when I'm working with clients on hormones, and I'll preface this by saying I pretty much exclusively end up working with clients who have a menstrual cycle. People who have low testosterone, it's a different topic. So I'll just stick to talking about people who have menstrual cycles or who used to have menstrual cycles. What I really like to start with is something called fertility awareness tracking. So it's really digging into like, what is your cycle doing on a day-to-day basis? How are your hormones fluctuating every single day throughout your cycle? Hormone tests are a single snapshot in time. It's that exact moment on that exact day and wherever you were in your hormone cycle. And everybody's hormone cycles change. If you have a menstrual cycle, it's, 20 to long. If you're someone who doesn't have a menstrual cycle, then your hormone cycle is every 24 hours. So we got to get a real sense of like what's happening on a longer period for you. And let's figure out why you're having a period for 2 weeks every 2 weeks, right? And then it's digging into what are some of the outside factors in your diet, in your lifestyle that could be contributing to this. And then let's work with some herbs that can help support bringing you back to balance.
Right on. No, that's really sage advice. Now, you have been wonderful. Thank you so much. Where can everybody find you?
My employees are my family, so they're we. Our website is goldenpoppyherbs.com. So it's golden and then poppy, poppyherbs.com. And that's also our handle on all social media. Golden Poppy Herbs, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook are the places that you can find us. We have an in-person store in Colorado. We're open 7 days a week. We have an online store, and myself and my 2 other clinical herbalists, we do consultations both in person and online. So a lot of different ways to work with us.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.